You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Hristodoulou.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Hristodoulou, and today, as we do every Thursday and Friday, we will begin picking through week number 5 of the USFL, going over the games, who I think is going to win, and giving some score predictions. So make sure as you're watching along, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the games, who you think is going to come out victorious, maybe some score predictions on your end. Currently sitting at 10-6 on the season, so a pretty good start to the first 4 weeks of the year. I've had a handful of 3-1 records, with a lone 1-3 in week number 3 being a crazy upset week, but overall, so far, so good. So let's dive right in. Again, we're talking just Saturday's picks. I'll do Sundays tomorrow, so make sure you tune in for that as well. But starting with the Pittsburgh Maulers taking on the Michigan Panthers. This one's in Detroit at Ford Field. It'll be at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time on the USA channel if you are looking to watch. And I believe you can watch this one on Peacock as well. I believe any NBC and USA game can be found on Peacock. So if you don't have either of those channels for whatever reason, you are always good to just jump onto their streaming service. I think it's like $4.99 a month or something like that. So not a bad price to watch some UFL action if you're looking for the games. Now, coming into this game here, the Maulers come in off of a heartbreaking loss to the Stallions, where they were about this close to stealing a victory away from the defending champions, whereas the Panthers have kind of fallen to some quarterback woes in the last couple of weeks. The defense has come back down to earth a little bit as well, and both these teams feel like they're kind of heading in opposite directions. I'd say the Maulers are trending in the right direction now as their offense is really starting to find themselves, and the Panthers' offense is kind of losing themselves here, and the defense is struggling to kind of hang on and be the anchor to this team, or at least what's left of the anchor of this team. We'll look at the Maulers first, though, kind of break them down and what I think they need to do to be successful here. They're coming off their best offensive performance of the season by far, by like nearly 100 yards total in the game. They totaled up 311, season best for them against that Birmingham Stallions team. And I don't really think it's a coincidence that Troy Williams came in and had himself a game, the best performance by a quarterback so far for this team, that ended up being the result. I really think that Troy Williams might be the spark that this team needs for them to be able to really push through and make a run for the North Division. He was 21 of 33, 217 yards passing, no touchdowns, but no interceptions, so a good clean game there. Then he had 7 runs for 63 yards and a rushing touchdown. I've got to say, really impressed with what I saw from him last week, and I think you want to continue to lean into him. It's very clear that this offense works a lot better with short, quick passes, some trick plays here and there, and you have the talent to do it on offense, especially, wide receiver Bailey Gaither last week, really starting to look like that guy that we saw last year as one of the best receivers in the USFL. So I really think that Pittsburgh has an opportunity to steal a win over if they play well to their strengths. Again, trick plays, quick passes. The running game needs to get better. I feel like outside of Troy Williams, the run game has just been fairly awful. And by running through quicker, trickier type of plays, you don't need to put the offensive line into so much pressure, because they've clearly struggled there in terms of opening up running lanes, in terms of just like the basic running attack. And then on top of that, they're not necessarily the best at defending when it comes to pass protection as well. So I really think that you want to keep things quick, keep the defense kind of guessing as to what's going on here, and no vanilla. Vanilla cannot work for this offense, is kind of the way I look at it, if you want to seriously make a push here and get a victory over a team like the Panthers. As for the defensive side, I've got to say, every single week so far, I feel like I've been more and more impressed with the Pittsburgh Maulers, but I went into last week's game with the Maulers facing the Stallions thinking to myself, this is kind of a benchmark game for this defense. We're going to find out just how good this unit really is, because the Stallions, have been very, very good on offense, and they did an excellent job. They allowed only 17 points to the offense, because remember, one touchdown was a kick return by Deon Kane, so that goes to special teams there. They allowed only 4.7 yards per play. They had a couple of interceptions, and again, they were this close to stealing a win over those defending champions. So the main goal in this game is pretty simple, I would say. Make whoever is quarterback one of the Panthers just feel uncomfortable. Pressure, get after the quarterback. You've been pretty good in terms of getting after the quarterback as well and bringing him down. So try to contain Stevie Scott and Reggie Corbin as much as you can, but the Panthers have been dealing with quarterback troubles. Try to make them as uncomfortable as possible. And again, I think the Maulers have a really good shot of pulling off a victory here and spoiling the third opportunity for the Panthers to get a win in front of their home crowd. When you're looking at the Panthers in this game here, offensively, like I kind of already mentioned, the quarterback trouble has just kind of continued to pile on. And at this point, I'm seeing people complain about both quarterbacks. Some people saying that, maybe we need to just keep giving Josh Love a chance. I'm hearing a lot of people say that they need to go with Carson Strong, and I feel like giving him a real opportunity is probably something you want to start looking at. I was even mentioning during my power rankings earlier this week, maybe you need to give the Stallions a call and see what you can do to get Kyle Sloter from them, because right now this quarterback situation is just not looking good for the Panthers. For them to be successful in this game here, and it's going to be really tough, but you got to lean on your players that have looked really good. So I'm talking like wide receiver Trey Walker and your duo of running backs in Reggie Corbin and Stevie Scott. They've obviously been a really good running back duo, consistently putting up numbers, pushing towards 100 yards or more per game as they've worked together in tandem, but it's going to be a tall task. The Maulers' run defense is by no means a slouch. They're allowing only 79 yards a game, which is the second fewest, 2 rushing touchdowns, which is the lowest, and that's in 4 games. You've allowed only 2 rushing touchdowns. It's a tough task to run the football against the Maulers team, but that's kind of where your offensive strengths lie, so you're going to have to lean into them. And again, Trey Walker has been emerging. He was dealing with some drops issues earlier in the season, but it seems like he's kind of finding himself now. Hopefully, you can just lean into your stars and your playmakers and kind of hope for the best, but I'm really worried about the offense of the Panthers going into this game here. As for the defense, the biggest thing that I've noticed from them so far this year through the first 2 games and then going into the next following 2 games after that is there is a clear issue with defending quarterbacks that are willing to use their legs to make a play. While you look at last week, Cole Kelly is not necessarily a scrambling lightning rod at quarterback, but he was able to run in for a couple of touchdowns when he needed to. And then you look at the week prior to that, you got absolutely torched as well against DeAndre Johnson, just having an awful time trying to deal with a quarterback that's willing to move. And now you're going up against a team in the Pittsburgh Maulers who Troy Williams clearly showed he was not afraid to run the football. You have got to figure out how to defend it because, again, a lot of things are just pointing towards the Maulers' direction in this game right now, and containing Troy Williams has got to be like the biggest point of emphasis for you because you've clearly struggled with quarterbacks willing to use their legs these last couple of weeks, and I don't think it's a coincidence that you also happen to lose these last 2 games as well. Coupled with that, the other thing you want to be doing here, the Maulers' offensive line, like I said, has not been by any means spectacular. They've allowed 12 sacks this season. And on top of that, 97 rushing yards a game is the 3rd lowest in the league. So when it comes to protecting the quarterback or even just trying to open up things for the run, quarterback aside, the Maulers' offensive line has been a weakness. So you're definitely going to want to attack that. But again, you have to expect trick plays, quick passes. You've got to get to the quarterback and get to him quickly if you want to have any chance of being successful here and getting a win in front of your home crowd. Again, this is the 3rd week in a row now you're playing at home. Do not go and three-peat the losses. Three-peats are typically talked about in high praise, but in this situation, we do not want a three-peat of losses if we're talking the Michigan Panthers here. Now, as for who I think is going to come out victorious in this game, I've been fighting this idea for quite a while here, and my main concern really is just that I don't necessarily know if the state that the Panthers are in, especially offensively, if they're going to be able to handle just how good this Maulers defense is. And again, it feels like they're both teams, I should say, are heading in complete different directions. Whereas like the offense of the Panthers is kind of falling apart. And then the Maulers offense seems like they might be starting to find themselves. If they can just get like a good, solid run game going that isn't Troy Williams, I'm talking like being able to run the football with your running backs effectively for more than 2 yards a carry, the Maulers have a fairly complete team at this point. Again, it was 1 week, so small sample size, but they did it against a Stallions team that's really good and littered with talent on defense. I'm really excited to see to what direction they continue to go in, but right now it feels like they're trending positively. I'm going to have to go with the Maulers in this game. I just don't know if I can pick the Panthers the way they've looked the last couple of weeks. And while the Maulers may be 1-3, they have been a very, very competitive 1-3 team, whereas the Panthers are coming off of a blowout loss to what a lot of people thought were the league's worst team in the Memphis Showboats. So with all that in mind, I like the Maulers. I have them winning 20-17. I think it's not going to be a super high-scoring affair. I still expect to see a few growing pains. Again, this is only the second week now where we're going to see Troy Williams as quarterback one for the Maulers, so still some growing pains, but maybe a little more offensive success. And until I see the Panthers, figure out a way to deal with quarterbacks that are, again, willing to use their legs to make plays, I don't know if I can believe in them in this matchup here. It just feels like the Maulers match up really well in this game. As for the second game that we're looking at here, this one is at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Protective Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama. You can catch this game on Fox. The Houston Gamblers will be playing the Birmingham Stallions in a grudge match, I would say, from last year. This is a rivalry game, both from the South here, but the Gamblers were the only team in the USFL last year to hand the Stallions a loss during the regular season. And while this isn't the same exact Gamblers team, there's a lot of new people, and honestly, at this point, really starting to step up on this team. It's a vastly different unit, but a unit that I think has an opportunity to really bring it to the Stallions. Stallions are continuing to flex their depth and find ways to win, but right now, if I was to sit here and talk about a team and I wasn't able to talk the New Orleans Breakers, I would say that the Houston Gamblers might just be the hottest team in the league right now. Again, that's not named the New Orleans Breakers, so I'm feeling really good about this one here. You look at the Gamblers' offense, and since Mark Thompson has come into the fold, this offense has felt very, very complete. Arguably one of the more complete in the league. Stallions' run defense, on top of that, with that being mentioned, they're allowing 139 yards a game and 5 rushing touchdowns so far on the year. This is kind of a matchup nightmare defensively for the Stallions. The Gamblers' offense has been very, very good, both passing and now running the football since Mark Thompson has got here. Thompson's averaging 6.3 yards a carry right now, and in 2 games has 5 rushing touchdowns in 214 yards. Again, 139 yards per game allowed by the Stallions. That is a recipe for disaster for the Stallions defensively. And then on top of that, since they've protected the football the last 2 weeks, they've only allowed 1 offensive turnover in each game. They're 2-0. They've cleaned up the turnovers, it seems like. Protecting the football has become a large focus for this team. The Gamblers' offense, again, just about as hot as they come. If you're not talking New Orleans Breakers, I think the team right behind them is the Houston Gamblers. As for the defensive side of the ball, they're coming off of their best performance of the season last week, and I think that says a lot for this team and is something that they're going to need to double down on and do again this week against the Stallions offense that is very, very good. You have to make sure you're getting after Magoo. He's a quarterback that if you give him the opportunity, he's going to make you pay. This isn't the Alex Magoo that we saw last year. It's clear when he has the opportunity to make plays, if you're giving him time to either find a running lane or find the open guy, he's going to make you pay. So you've got to get to Alex Magoo and get to him fast. You have 11 sacks on the season, which is second most. You have a proven pass rush here at this point in the season. Get after him and do what you can to disrupt that Stallions offense. On top of that, you got to shut down the run. And I think that the Gamblers have a good opportunity of doing that so far. And this was something that when I looked up this number was actually a bit surprising to me because I didn't realize this because I feel like teams have moved a lot, but it's mainly through the air. They are allowing only about 71 yards per game rushing. That's the Gamblers. Fantastic. The Stallions run game is not necessarily they're not going to light the world on fire. They're averaging 107 per game. They're 5th in the league. So middle of the road, I would say, somewhere around there. And Alex Magoo does have a decent amount of those yards as well because he's not afraid to run the football if he needs to. So shut down the running game and you've got to get to Magoo. Those are your 2 big focus points on defense here. When you look at the Stallions, 3 turnovers last week. Alex Magoo had 2. Zaquandre White had a fumble. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot go through 3 turnovers again this week against this Gamblers team because they will make you pay if you're turning the ball over and giving them a short field. They have found proven success getting into the end zone, especially the last 3 weeks. If you cut out week number 1, I believe they're averaging it's either 33 or 34 points a game. That is a problem to deal with on defense, especially if you're giving them short fields at that. I would say in this one here, air the ball out as much as you can. You don't necessarily need to abandon the run game. You don't want to do that, but don't focus too much on trying to get things going because the Gamblers' passing defense has not been that great. Yes, they've been able to get after the quarterback, and some of those stats might be inflated because of the Stars game that they had last week, but they're allowing 231 yards per game through the air, which is the most in the league, and they've also allowed 9 passing touchdowns, which is the second most in the league as well. So you look at the Stallions team, they're averaging 8.5 yards per attempt. Be aggressive, throw the football, and see if you can dice up that secondary that's kind of been struggling so far this year. On top of that, you've allowed 9 sacks this season. If you can protect Magoo, and again, numbers might be slightly inflated for the Gamblers because of last week's game, I think the Stallions have a really good shot at moving the football and keeping pace with the Gamblers here. As far as defense goes, the biggest focal point for this unit needs to be stopping Mark Thompson. Stack the box, bring in a safety if you need to, but you're going to have to trust in your secondary to win their matchups if you want to have any chance of stopping this Gamblers team. I feel like, they were able to move the ball prior to Mark Thompson getting there. Don't get me wrong, there was some good running going on from the Gamblers, but now that Mark Thompson's in there, he's averaging like 6.3 yards per carry. I mean, he's a bulldozer. If you can at least mitigate what he's been doing for the Gamblers in the ground game, that should at least give you a hope and chance against a Gamblers offense that has just been absolutely on fire the last few weeks. On top of that, if we're talking the passing game, you've got to find a way to eliminate Justin Hall. He has been unbelievable. Their wide receiver, 19 receptions, 250 yards, and 4 touchdowns. This is somebody that's fighting for Offensive Player of the Year right now with how good he's doing. And I feel like he hasn't gotten quite the love that he deserves. And he's kind of like had like a sneaky quiet because the Gamblers struggled early on. So people, I feel like, haven't really looked at the Gamblers and thought of guys that are Offensive Player of the Year candidates. This is a guy who firmly checks the box in a lot of places for that opportunity there. So try to eliminate Justin Hall as much as you can and be aggressive, force mistakes. Just like I mentioned earlier, the Gamblers, they're 2-0 the last couple of weeks with only 1 turnover in each of those last 2 games. However, the Gamblers are 0-2 when they've turned the football over 2 or more times. I'm not going to say that this team is prone to turnovers because the last 2 weeks have shown that they can clean it up and protect the ball. But if you could start forcing those errors and forcing those mistakes, I think back to the game against the New Orleans Breakers there when the going got tough and the defense from the Breakers got really aggressive, they were able to steal that game away and lock things up because the defense just got, they kind of pinned their ears back, made Kenji Bahar uncomfortable. The game was kind of a shootout, so they were, they were moving away, from running the football, and you were able to force Kenji Bahar into back-to-back interceptions, which essentially shut down the game and gave the Breakers the victory. Something along those lines is what you're going to need to do here as well. Force the mistakes, make Kenji Bahar to start, speed up his way of thinking and maybe into a bad throw or 2, especially late in the game when I'm assuming this game gets a little out of hand in terms of scoring. I'm expecting a little bit more of a fun matchup on this one here compared to the last game that we just previewed. But as for who I think is going to come out victorious and who wins this game here, I'm going to go with the Gamblers. Right now, the Stallions, I know that they were coming off of facing a really tough Maulers defense, and I'm not too surprised that we got the result that we did last week with them, basically needing a kickoff return to win the game. But something feels a little shaky about the Stallions offensively right now. And like I said, if we're not talking the Breakers, the Gamblers are one of the hottest teams in the USFL right now on both defense and offense right now specifically. Again, they're averaging, I believe it's 33 or 34 points, one of those two. I can't remember the exact number, but 33 or 34 points a game right now since week 2 offensively. They're just putting up numbers. So I'm going to take the Gamblers. Higher scoring affair. I think that, they right the kind of wrong that they had in week 2 in their loss to the Breakers by being able to win in some sort of a shootout here, 29-27, tight game in the end. Gamblers go with a walk-off touchdown to win the game, similar to a game that they won just a couple of weeks ago. But that is it for me. Again, I like the Maulers. I like the Gamblers. I feel like I'm picking 2 underdogs in Saturday's games. This is one that I don't know what the betting lines look like or anything like that, but I don't feel like the Maulers and Gamblers are going to be favored by everyone in these matchups here, but I'm going all in on the progress I'm seeing from the Maulers. And again, the Gamblers are about as hot as anyone right now, so I'm having a hard time picking against them at this very moment. They've been proving me really well the last few weeks, but that is it for me. I appreciate you if you made it all the way to the end of the video. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.